Mathematics Jussieu, and her title is Multiplicities of Compact Group Representations, Qualitative Properties in Computations.
So thank you very much for inviting me here. So in fact, it was a very challenging invitation, and I wanted indeed to try to, for this conference, to compute something like computing some Kronecker coefficient with corresponding with 3 rows. And I was happy that I could present some results, but last week was really a nightmare because I realized that checking some calculation for small cases and non-generic, let's say, I realized that I was getting some number -1, which was so I had some nightmares. But we'll see why I did something wrong and that it is a delicate thing to do. Anyway, but so I think I understood something more, in fact. So, I hope... no, okay, so... there is many things that I will that have been discussed here. So I will probably. I am happy that several things have been presented already. So my setting is like that. I will come back to some more precise examples. So even if somewhat the setting may be a little bit general, too general for this talk, I prefer to give some kind of general setting. So we have a compact connected Lie group, and there is a set of K hat, the set of irreducible finite dimensional complex representation of K, and I consider a complex vector space with a representation of K, and this complex vector space is direct sum of irreducible representation of complex representation of K, and here I am interested in the multiplicity. So this so what do I do? I have a pointer here. No, anyway. Yes. So this space was the so-called isotypic component in the talk of Landsbergs, but I am interested in computing the multiplicities. So if either you write this like that, and concretely, and in fact this will be this concrete form of this decomposition that I will use to compute. That means K acts by a matrix. You compute K acts by a matrix on V, you compute the trace of this matrix on V, and you want to decompose it as a sum over pi of with some number of pi, and these are the trace of the irreducible representation, which are given by the Weil character formula. So you want to write that as in function of the Weil characters. And this is the function we call the multiplicity function of V, so it's just the analog of the multiplicity of an eigenvalue of an operator. So this is just a multiplicity, just writing, computing the multiplicities of eigenvalues, if you want. And so the example I was most familiar with is the Littlewood-Richardson coefficient, or so-called Clebsch-Gordon coefficient. So we take the tensor product of two irreducible representations of compact group K. The group K acts diagonally, and you decompose the tensor product. So you multiply the two representations, and you decompose it again in finite dimensional irreducible finite representation. So what can you say about the C lambda mu nu? And here I want to advertise for a program that, a Maple program that one of my students wrote, which is on my web page. And it computes the C lambda mu nu for classical root systems. And it also computes the stretch coefficient. So if you stretch the coefficient, lambda mu nu, in k lambda, k mu, it will give you the answer as a quasi-polynomial function of k. So this is, I will discuss this a little bit later. So this is a setting that I was familiar with.
What's the largest period one can get for a simple Lie algebra? Simple Lie group?
I don't remember, but already G2, I think you get 6, if I remember.
Okay, so it's the same as the largest coefficient.
Yeah, largest coefficient of the, yeah, that's right. That's right. Yes, I am not sure it occurs all the time because, for example, you see that this function for D, but anyway, I don't want to discuss that. It doesn't necessarily be on the, okay. So here, this is here, we are here, we discuss very natural problem, which is you consider the CP1 tensor CP2 tensor CP3, and that means you consider the space of polynomial function on P1, P2, P3 variable. And of course, this is the representation for UP1 cross UP2 cross UP3, and then you want to decompose this on tensor product of representation of the group P1, UP1, UP2, UP3. And these are the Kronecker coefficients that can you compute them. And I must say that for some reason, here they are much harder to compute than the other one. And some of the reasons why the C lambda mu nu are easier, I realize something that I will discuss later. Why it's easier for some reason. So I wanted to answer before it is asked, what about quantum marginals? But anyway, if nobody asks. Okay, but we have been many times, these things have been many times discussed, but I repeat it. If you have some density matrices with rational coefficients, so positive rational coefficient, and you assume that the denominator of this density matrix is L. So if you multiply by the L, they become integers, so they become, and you range you consider the eigenvalue is in decreasing order, so it corresponds to highest weight. And so these metrics are the quantum marginals of a pure state in CA tensor CB tensor CC, if and only if, for some large k, the representation KL rho A, which is now this is the highest weight, tensor KL rho B, tensor V LKC, is contained in the symmetric coefficient, in the representation in symmetric K. So that means the Kronecker coefficient dilated KL rho A is not 0. And this is not only, I want to say, this is not only something, okay, very helpful. So in the first part of my talk, I will discuss some qualitative general result about quantizing a general symplectic manifold. Again, this is not completely necessary for this, the kind of problem we will discuss later, but I think it's it's interesting for me. And so you quantize the general symplectic manifold. So for example, everybody knows that you have R2n with its symplectic coordinates pi, qj. You quantize it either in L2 of Rn, like the Heisenberg model, or as a Fock space. And here we will discuss about our realization will be the Fock space. That means you write M as Cn. And okay, we will come back. And in this general context, you have now a group of symmetry. So M is a classical model. You have a compact group of symmetry. It can be lifted up to the quantum model, and you are trying to decompose the representation corresponding to your quantum model. It's a level of energy of some particle or something like that. Okay, and so it's a general framework. You want to quantize the symplectic manifold with a compact group action. And the second part, in the second part, M will be Cn. Then Q of M will be the space of polynomials on Cn. And then we want to describe the symmetric representation, and we want to compute, we want to do something with this special representation. However, I am interested in this function m pi of v as a function of pi. Pi is indexed by a lattice, at least a cone in a lattice. So I want to discuss what kind of function you get on lattices. So I discuss what is a periodic polynomial function on a lattice. So we have a lattice L, so E is a vector space and L is a lattices, and so a polynomial function is just a restriction to the lattice of a polynomial function. But we are obliged to add to this space of polynomials some periodic functions, so that means some function will be only function of L mod QL. And we take the space generated by all these polynomials and periodic function. And this I will call a periodic polynomial function. So I gave an example, so maybe this example looks to you, it occurs. I give this example because M of k, if you can think, it takes integral value on all the integers. And it is, I said that it is the coefficients which are constant, I say they are period 1, because L over KL, that means constant. So this is 1 half, so the two first coefficients are period 1, and then you have a period 2, minus 1 power k, which is k. So it's a periodic polynomial with periods 1 and 2. I will not go in details on how to encode the problem is also how to encode the output of something which is quasi-polynomial. But anyway, for the moment, we don't care too much. So I start to recall some general result on quantizing the symplectic manifold, and then I will go to specific examples. So here I do some list of notation, maybe if either you know them and then you don't care about them, so and so I can pass very quickly. So, but maybe we say only V lambda k, the corresponding irreducible representation k with highest weight lambda. It's it's a representation which is highest weight lambda, and the most important for me will be the Weil character formula for this representation. So there is this incredibly beautiful Weil character formula for the representation of K. So the highest weight are, so these are the parameterization of, for UN, this is a parameterization, so they are indexed by point in a lattice, which is rather normal. It's a compact group, so you can have only, and recall once more the Kirwan polyhedron. So I think there was a talk of Doran, which gave already the definition, and also many other people. So, but I repeat it. So we have Hamiltonian compact connected manifold. We have the moment map phi k, which commutes with the action of k. And so the Kirwan so if you look at the image of the moment map k, it's a k invariant subset of k star. So it completely determined by its action with its intersection with a positive Wald-Schemper, and this is a convex polytope, quite amazing. And for M projective, I make another advertisement on my web page. So you have there is a detailed things for Mumford argument for that. That was the same than was given in the talk of Doran, and why it's a convex polytope in the case that M is projective. So, but it's true in general for any compact connected symplectic manifold. So, here I took some pictures which come from the article of Chris Standel, Doran, and Walter, and so on. So we... What?
To answer your question, what's the difference between a convex polytope and a convex polyhedron? What's the difference?
I will take cones. Convex polytope is compact.
So it's compactness.
Compactness.
Which one is the compact one? Sorry.
Polytope.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Polytope is compact. Polyhedron.
Not necessarily.
Polyhedron is a polytope plus a cone. In fact, we will see cone over polytopes. Sorry. Okay. So I take these pictures from all my pictures are taken from are stolen.
For this polyhedron, you have definitely many inequalities or only local?
I do, let's say, if M is can be embedded in a vector space, it's finite number of inequality. M a compact space embedded in a vector finite number. But yes, you can compute example with infinite. No, but finite number of So all my pictures are stolen. So this is so we do the rotation under the OZ axis for the sphere of radius 1, and the moment map is just the height, and so you get as moment polytope you get minus r to r. And maybe the example of a moment map is this. You take matrices from A to B, and the action of U of A in one side and U of B of one side. Then the moment map is just x star, and the other one is x star x, and so you obtain. I mean, there should be some I somewhere here because it depends if you consider the. If you want to go in I k star, anyway, this is a moment map. I will be interested in dilated coefficient, so I introduce a dilated Kirwan polytope. That means I will consider this polytope, and we will make the cone over it. So we introduce this dilated Kirwan polytope, which is you just made up all like that. You can deal together with all the possible level of the polytope. So this is no, this drawing is very bad, so it's not stolen. So So, okay, oh, this was so this was this minus 1, 1, and we make the cone over that. Okay, so this is just all together, we get all the polytopes. And so now I go a little bit quickly, because if you have a so-called pre-quantizable manifolds, and to each you have an omega, which is a symplectic form, which is integral. You can quantize this manifold, but if you dilate your form by your symplectic form by k, then you obtain another manifold that you can quantize also. And so, and more the volume is big in some sense, the more representation you have. And so you write this quantized version of your manifold. You try to understand how it varies with level k.
What's the definition of QM thing?
Okay, M will be, as I said before, if M is, I suppose, P of H, H a vector space, Q of M will be just the polynomial of order, the homogeneous polynomial of degree k. And those.
Is Q of M then just the coordinate ring of?
No, because you see, you don't. I want to. Okay, so maybe I. You have a symplectic manifold which don't have complex structure.
I see.
Maybe you don't care, but it's true. It occurs. It occurs. No? And even there is a very nice example. So you cannot do coordinate rings, but you do something very similar. No? You do so, but
if it has a complex structure, then it's the coordinate ring?
that's right.
Okay.
Yeah. You can think of that. If you see a Taylor manifold, it's a little bit different. And then this is the Dolbeault complex. Huh? You will have the alternate sum. This is the alternate sum of the cohomology of the Dolbeault complex. But, okay. And you dilate your symplectic structure. Okay. But it's very important to deal with things which don't have a complex structure, because all the, at least for me, because all the proofs of this is a theorem which is rather fine, and okay, so I will okay, I'll forget about that. Even to prove this theorem even for projective manifold, is not easier to prove it in the general context, and even it's easier to prove it in the general context, because you cut the proofs that I know is you cut your manifolds in many parts. Okay, so the qualitative behavior is like that, is that you consider this cone, and there is a decomposition of this cone in a lot of pieces. And on each of these pieces, you can find on each of, so these pieces are embedded in a vector space, and you can find a periodic polynomial function PA on this lattice Z plus lambda, such that M of K mu is equal to the quasi-polynomial function on these pieces. So on each pieces, the formulas are nice. And in particular, when you dilate the coefficient, when you dilate, you take a multiplicity, you dilate it, and you obtain a periodic polynomial. So that means you obtain a polynomial function of k with some coefficients which are not constant, but which have a little bit of periodicity. And so in some sense, you can analyze the behavior of this coefficient for large K. You can look at this is a quasi-polynomial coefficient in K mu, but for periodic polynomial coefficient, you have also the notion of the highest degree in K mu. And this highest degree is a polynomial in K mu. It's not periodic anymore, it's just an homogeneous polynomial in K mu. So if you want to consider the large behavior for K, you need only the part of the homogeneous part of this polynomial of highest degree. And so this is the Dwyer-Matekman measure that then this multiplicity, m of K mu, on some cone is written as a polynomial in K mu, and there is some lower degree term in K mu. And so for this reason, it's nice to call this decomposition in CA chamber for polynomiality. All the results that I stated are consequences of the theorem of Mainreinkens-Yama. And maybe there is also in this proof, you get this by getting a real geometric meaning for all these numbers, and in particular, you have a meaning for the Dwyer-Matekman measure as the reduced space, the volume of the reduced space. So there is some poster here which tells you all about the reduced space and how to describe it. So I think that I couldn't steal these pictures, but anyway. So. So it's very important, this continuity property. That means that you have this cone and you have a spline on this cone. Spline meaning like in a really spline, like in approximation theory. That means some polynomials which match up to the boundary, and you can somewhat compute how they vary when you cross a boundary. This is due to Paradon. And the multiplicity functions are also continuous up to the boundary. They are continuous and they match on the boundary. These CA are closed, and you have polynomial function. You have quasi-polynomial function, and they all match up. And in fact, this was my mistake for getting -1. Because I was to computing it, my formula is very alternate, and I move my coefficient on the okay. So this is stolen also. So this is we have seen that this is the K1 polytope for P of H. So H here is C2, the projective space over C2 tensor C2 tensor C2. We act by U2 cross U2 cross U2. In fact, it's only SU2 which is acting, because otherwise the center goes to 0, acts trivially. And so it's possible to do it's possible to draw this K1 polytope in arc plus power 3. And then you obtain a decomposition in 6 chambers for polynomiality. And I think you can see the 6 chambers on this drawing. And you can also compute the multiplicities. And they have been computed by Briand, Orellana, and Rosas. So you can compute the multiplicity when you stretch the coefficient over this cone. So this is a kind of, you have to imagine this kind of pictures, polytope decomposed in chambers, and the cone over these polytopes, and then you if you stretch the coefficient, you obtain some formula. But the Dwyer-Matekman measure, it's an homogeneous polynomial, so you can just draw it on this. As it is homogeneous, the Dwyer-Matekman measure, you can just draw it here, because it's invariant by dilation. I mean, it's homogeneous by dilation. So in subset the Dwyer-Matekman measure, you can draw it on compact. The other one, the other one, you have to to do the sketch. So this is
It's piecewise linear, the multiplicity function.
piecewise polynomial.
Okay, I was confused. You said it's a period.
Here,
With
here.
period 1 and period 2.
Yes, so something like that.
It's like
In this case.
I think it's lambda 1 plus, so you have a highest weight, lambda 1, lambda 2. I think, anyway, I don't remember exactly. You have 3 highest weight, huh? And then the multiplicity on this chamber, for example, it depends on only one of the coefficients, which one is 1. So it will be just lambda 1, and then there will be some coefficient, I don't remember, something like that. First, I have the formula somewhere. So it's linear, but the form you will take depends of the chamber you are. Yes, on each thing you have a linear form, but the constant term depends of some lattice. Yes, so yes, some property of module. We have you give a talk on this, all these cones, and you know that.
But this is a nice example.
And you will have some congruence property with the coefficient. It has to be I have the anyway. You can find it. But I don't 3, 4 or something like that. Okay, maybe I'll give the other example. And so for this 3 qubits, it's piecewise linear. Huh? And so I do the drawing from 0 to 1 of the measure, this Sturm-Lachmann measure function. So it's linear, so it goes like that. I did only. And for 4 qubits, so you know the K1 polytope, it has a very easy description by, I think this is these people. I have no idea of the number of polynomiality chambers. How it decomposes, how this cone can decompose into chambers, I have no idea how many. But anyway, whatever the number is, if you give yourself the alpha, beta, gamma, delta, then we can compute this stretch coefficient. We don't know if it is 0 or not, but we compute it and then we see. And so it is a polynomial of a degree at most 7 and period 6, so I gave an example. And you see it's degree 7. It is, this is a period, so all the highest coefficient is rather natural. All the highest coefficients, they have a tendency to be just constants. It starts to be bad for the low coefficient.
What is is there a reason for having the colors sometimes with the pluses? And
No.
That's just.
No, I don't understand why it comes like that, no. No.
Okay, just I wasn't sure if it was.
No meaning, no.
Concise notation.
What? No. I guess I tried to put at the beginning the fourth coefficient were just polynomials. There no then you have a degree 2, you have a period 2 for the 3 coefficients, 2, and up to, by the way, to the last, but the last one is period 6. And these are the values.
Do you have any interpretation of these numbers?
Absolutely not. And absolutely not. It's amazing when you do put, look at that. You put an integer on this polynomial, and the answer is an integer. It's an integer. And it's not the proof that your program is correct.
It increases the odds.
Because I thought it was a proof that the program is correct. But with this expression, which are horrible, I got sometimes, not for this one, -1. So
is there a simple explanation why this periodicity?
yes, there is a simple explanation. Yeah. You can compute the periodicity in advance. Yeah, I will.
An explanation why you have the periodicity.
Yes, because yes, the best explanation is the best explanation is really I was saying. We know this number in function of Riemann-Roch theorem on an orbifold. We know this number. There is a geometric meaning of this number as Riemann-Roch theorem on an orbifold.
The multiplicity.
Yeah, of the multiplicities. So you know exactly. So, for example, the period will correspond. So the L is the L doesn't descend on the orbifold. So the period is like the Picard group. So it has been computed in many times. You look at the period correspond to the L, such that your L power something descend.
There's no such sort of purely representation.
I will maybe discuss later. Yes, you can compute something on the periods a priori. Yeah, but you are not sure that you are not. Yeah, you can say. And this is a Duistermatt-Ekman. So I don't know the number of chambers for general things, but I know for if you do I suppose if you do this line, if you go on, I don't know. I thought it was nice to consider the diagonal because there is alpha, 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 alpha. You know the same thing, so I thought it was nice to go on the diagonal, and then you can see the domains of polynomiality. You have 5 because. And this is the spline for the Duistermatt-Ekman measure along this line.
For the benefit of the quantum information people, may I connect it to? So if you draw a pure state of 3 qubits or 4 qubits,
4 qubits
at random, and you ask what's the probability to hit well, what is plotted there is the probability density to hit a point with spectrum on that line, right? So these are 2 spectral points, right? One is the product state, and the other one is the GHZ state on 4 qubits, and now draw a line between these 2 spectra, and you ask yourself, you draw a 4 qubit state with Haar measure at random. You ask yourself, what's the probability density on that line? That is plotted there.
Yes, that's right. So the 1 0, 1 0, 1 0, 1 0 correspond to the image of the so-called non-decomposable vector, the decomposable tensor, E1 tensor, E1 tensor, E1 tensor, E1. And the other one is, yeah. So this is finished for the general case. And I go now for quantization of Hermitian vector spaces. So we are now for algebraic geometry in Fabry round. My manifold is P of H, so Pn minus 1 of C. So, but I will quantize the full Cn, and you can think of the quantization as the Fock space quantization. That means the symmetric polynomial on Cn, and you grade them by degree, and so you can think that so I will discuss now the quantized space is just symmetric polynomials, and I want to try to compute, at least in some cases, the Duistermatt function and the multiplicities. And as we will see when we consider, so in some sense there is 2 cases. So anyway, we'll see that it's the same problem that computing the number of points in a polytope and or the volume of a polytope. And I think that our technique, the technique that I have been developing, are based on the my work with Shenes on computing number of points by iterated residue. Okay. So again, I'm back to the familiar setting here. We take a Hilbert space, a finite dimensional Hilbert space with an action of K, and I will suppose always that K contains the homothésis, so the quantization of H is just the ring is so symmetric of K of H, so the ring of polynomial function of homogeneous of degree K on if H is Cn, so this is polynomial function of degree K in n variables. So let's do the simplest example. We have C2 with the action of e power I phi, so just the dilation action. Symmetric polynomials just break up in polynomial of degree, homogeneous of degree K in two variables. This is e power I phi, then acts by e power I k phi here. What is the dimension of this space? This is k plus 1, because if you have an homogeneous polynomial, you have x1 power k, x1 power k minus 1, x2, and so on and so on. So you get k plus 1, the dimension is k plus 1. And let's look at the, we have to this decomposition corresponds to the decomposition of the trace. So what is the trace of the action of e power I phi? Then it's break up into, it's a tensor product of two things. So you have this, and of course this is this series, and this series is this series. Okay, so we have the multiplicity by either an infinity. And so I want, suppose I didn't know that suppose I didn't know that the dimension of this space is k of C2. So I would recompute it by looking at the Fourier series of that. Because I need to decompose, so this is this equation.
The first equality, where does it come from? It should now be...
Because maybe I shouldn't, you have as basis, you have E1 power I and E2 power J, and this is your basis, and this, so S of V plus W is S of V tensor S of W. So the trace is multiplicated, the trace reduced to trace on what factor, and the trace on S of C is just 1 plus Z plus Z squared. So it's a multiplicative equation. So you multiply the trace, and now you decompose it. So this is the equation. And suppose I didn't know this coefficient. So I had to recompute it by looking at the Fourier expansion. So I had to compute it. So I have to do this decomposition of my function 1 over 1 minus z squared. I have to compute the Fourier coefficient. So I do it by an integral. I integrate over a small circle, and I should find my multiplicity. This is the Fourier coefficient. But you see, it's a bad formula in function of n, because it has a big pole at n equals, at z equals 0. N is large. So it has a large pole at n equals 0. On the other hand, you have a small pole at z equals 1. So you change the residue from z equals 0, where you have a big pole, to z equals 1, and you are allowed to do that, because there is no pole at infinity, and you obtain this formula. And this formula, it's very easy to compute, because you just, you have to compute, this is the binomial, you expand that by the coefficient, and you obtain the other formula. So this is a kind of formula that we have to decompose to find multiplicities. We take this trace and we integrate over T. But we have to move the pole somewhere else. And in several dimensions, where you have to move it to compute, it's much more delicate. And so now I have an action, so we have an action of of a compact group in Cn. We consider the maximal torus of K, and I will use both the groups T and K as the moment map for the abelian group T and the compact group K, so we obtain two cones. The K1 cone for the action of the torus and the K1 cone for the action of the compact group. And so I look at the list of weights of the torus in H of Cn, and so for example, if I look at the nu2 action of this is just a polynomial function of degree 2 in two variables, E1 square, E1, E2, and I have a nu2 action. So the weights are 2, 0, 1, 1, and 0, 2. And the trace, because of I decided, because of we decompose the trace, it's, as we said, it's a product of trace. So this is a trace on this. So this is the function we want to analyze. And we want to analyze the Fourier coefficient of this function. If you do it the computation, maybe I don't have really time to go over the computation exactly, but try to do it by residue. We know, we have to integrate z1 power minus n1, z2 power minus 2 over z1 equals 1 and z2 equals 1. You will see that it will depend if n1 is greater than n2 or n2 greater than n1, because when you will go it, you will make a pole appear at infinity or not. So, so the K1 polytope for the torus is very simple in some sense. It's just a cone generated by the weight phi. Just the moment map is just sigma of the I, the modulo of the I square phi I. So the moment polytope is, so it has been discussed in the talk of Doran. And so this is just, this K1 polytope is just a cone over, if we have several weights. Maybe I do this drawing because I'm most, it's nice because it occurs really so if this, then this is the K1 polytope is the cone over these weights. And we kind of understand also the chambers. We kind of understand this. We have these cones. I do the drawing of the roots of. I do the drawings of roots for S3. So you have one root, one root, one root, one root, one root, one root, like that. And this is and then you have the cone over that. And so you consider you remove, so you have to understand the cone over that, so on. You remove from C of H, you remove all possible subcones generated by sub-bases. I mean, you consider this cone, it has many generators. You somewhat consider category. Anyway, each you consider all possible bases. You take the cone generated by all these bases. You remove the boundary of that, and what remains is an open set. And on this open set, then your function is polynomial. The Dwyer-Steinman function is polynomial. And the Dwyer-Steinman measure for K. So I will assume that K acts on M with generic finite stabilizer. Then it's a cone also, and it's a union of some of these chambers. Oh yes, and you have to intersect. You have to intersect again with the Weil chamber. Where is the Weil chamber? It's not at all here. Just somewhere. Sorry. So you have to. The Weil chamber is very small, somewhat. Yeah, I think it's like that. No, it has to be. Yeah, I don't. So I should have done this drawing for that. So you re-intersect with the Weil chamber, and you have to understand which you differentiate, and you have to understand on which chamber the differentiation will be not zero. And
this is a measure on the cone. Where does Y live?
T-star.
Pour l'avenir de la mathématique.
So, for example, I do U2. So I have lambda 1, lambda 2. My chamber is lambda 1 greater than lambda 2. I have a cone and I intersect the chamber with T star.
So why?
T star.
So it's over the vial chamber.
So what did I say? CH of K is a cone in the vial chamber. It's a subcone of the. I think someone discussed this cone. This is a cone generated by. This is a cone generated by the weight which will occur. This is a cone generated by. What was your name? It was discussed in the previous talk.
I got it.
So this is a cone in the Weyl chamber which is generated by all the highest weight representation which will occur in the symmetric H. And you fill up with reals instead of, so you fill up with reals. So it's a cone in the Weyl chamber. You had the measure on the bigger cone which is generated by all the phi, and you have a formula to obtain the Dewey-Stermatek measure on that by differentiating the preceding measure with the differential operator. And as it was discussed also, I suppose this was also discussed in many talks, and it would be very nice to have another. So it will be very nice to have an understanding of this Dewey-Stermatek mad measure as the volume of some polytope, but I don't think it's very not many cases where it is true. So I guess I will go quickly over the last things, and as maybe it was clear from my description of what was I compute the multiplicity by computing Fourier coefficient. So I do an integral over a torus, but it's a torus as the integral has a very big this C star. I mean C star cross C star cross C star. But we move the contour somewhere else in order to compute the multiplicity by a reasonable formula. And this is the same thing. So this will be the kind of functional we will use on functions. And so this is, in fact, is a theorem which, for the Dewey-Stermatek measure, for the torus case, you consider this function. And you can recuperate the. So this is a function y is in T star, z is in T. So the phi are in T star, they are paired with z in T. You consider this holomorphic function. So it is a function on Tc, which have poles on the union of the hyperplane phi of z equals 0. And the theorem of Kirwan, Jeffrey Kirwan, tells you that given a chamber, you can find a contour, let's say, contour of made up of small torus, such that this formula is correct, that the Dewey-Stermatek mad measure at y is a sum of iterated residue. So that means you take a basis and you consider the residue for z1, z2, zn successively. And in fact, there is a nice algorithm to determine this set of residues in function of the family of admissible hyperplanes. And this is where I realized something, that if you consider the root system, classical root system R plus, classical root system root R plus, And you want to consider you consider all the hyperplanes generated by some, so R plus is in rank R, so you take R minus 1 root, and they eventually linearly independent, and you consider the hyperplanes they generate. Then the equation of this hyperplane is very easy, just a transform of fundamental co-weight. And in subset, it is amazing because this famous problem of the Horn equation, I mean, it's very hard to know, but the form of the equation is very simple. And this is because the hyperplanes are very simple. Now you do two copies. You do R plus R plus, which is this which occur for the problem of decomposing CA tensor CB tensor CC. For some reason, you can reduce to this problem. You do two copies of root system, and you will look at the things generated by that. I have no idea of what are the hyperplanes which are generated by that. Maybe there should be some nice answer, but I have no idea. So this will determine the equation of the Kirwan polytope for, I don't know how to call that, CA tensor for the entanglement, for the quantum marginal for this polytope. So you would have to know this, and I realize that I don't know. So maybe and we have the same with Andras Chenes. We have the same formula for. We had a similar formula for the multiplicity with a lot of sums of residues. Here I should comment for the people of complexity theory. Our formula is quite efficient to compute. Maybe no, so then this is, I will go. So this is the residue formula that we have with Andras. And maybe I comment a little bit for people in complexity theory, because this formula with Chenes in principle computes the number of points in a polytope, but everybody knows that computing the number of polytopes is a NP-hard problem, the number of integral points in polytopes. Our formula is, even when the dimension is fixed, our formula is exponential complexity, but it's very efficient anyway. But on the other hand, it's very efficient for specific polytopes. So, but I would like to, in subset, we thought of rearranging this formula together. So it's better than Barvinock algorithm for these problems, but to go further, you should combine both. Barvinock algorithm is the only algorithm which is known to compute when the dimension of the polytope is fixed. You want to compute the number of points inside. When the dimension is fixed, you want to compute the number of integral points in a rational polytope in polynomial time. So there is an algorithm which is due to Barvinock. And here we compute for specific polytope, and we don't use Barvinock algorithm. On the other hand, I think to do something, it would be good to mix the two problems. So the method works. This method of high-iterated residue works for 3 qubits. It works also for qubits. And so I have no idea of more general cases. Maybe I give the last example. This is just a lowest dimensional term, which is period 12. And I must say, I find this, I have here learned very, very beautiful talk on when you don't consider many copies, but it's probabilistic talks, and in subsets it's very frustrating that if you want to have an exact result, it's you do, this is, I will think this is a border of my computation up to last week, but I don't think, and this is also where, no, it's for the 4 qubit side I found, but I understood where you had really to understand that the polytop, you shouldn't move your parameter in any direction to compute. Okay, so this is it.
Questions or comments?
So for this I'm not sure how to pronounce it, Q-thread case and the 4 qubit case, those are both cases where there's the orbit structure is still tame. So there's this trichotomy between orbit structures of sort of finite, tame, and wild. So, well, the simplest description of tame is you take a diagram of an affine Lie algebra and you remove a node, and you look at the representation that you would get corresponding to that. So is that the edge? Because there's like one or two more tame structures.
No.
So if I had 5 copies of C2, or
No, 5 copies of C2 doesn't. I think it's possible. It's not. I think yes. Maybe I should discuss a little bit.
tame.
What is the number of orbits finite? Is that the
No. Tame is finite means finite. Tame means that that it can be easily parameterized. And wild means you cannot parameterize it in any.
But you see,
way.
I mean,
So this is tame. This case.
I don't care.
Yeah, the 4
We-
qubit case also tame.
Yeah, in the 4 qubit case is tame.
I look at the moment map for any state. Huh?
Yeah.
So XDB. And so this is on rho of V, trace of rho of V and X. And I want to compute where comes given rho of V, I want to compute V from. I don't care, but it will be a finer problem to understand for which orbit comes this rho of V. You have this manifold M, and it has many orbits which are etc. And I don't, for the moment, it will be a final problem to understand the quantization of what you are considering, but I consider the quantization of. So I don't care about the number of orbits. It's rather funny because the multiplicity seems related to the number of invariants, like the talk of Doran, like the number of invariants with the action of the nilpotent group. But in some sense, this is very hard, and I don't care. I don't care.
So let me ask the question in kind of black box way. So there's 2 other. So if you have C2 tensor Cn tensor Cm, which have you tried any of those cases?
Yeah.
And which ones were
You
you?
see, it's very frustrating because C2, tensor C2, tensor C4, this has been already done, and you can do a little further with. You can do. I suppose we can do. I don't know what is your question.
Okay, then let's talk about it later.
The question is that if you want an exact result in some special cases, the difficulties are not. The difficulties of the method lies on something which is. I mean, there is many difficulties, but let's say that first difficulty for me is computing the set of hyperplanes. First. And then it works. It doesn't see the orbits. It's perpendicular to the orbits method. Weyl character formula plus A Weyl character formula, you have to expand it, and then you have to understand that the Weyl character formula depends the form of the Weyl character formula. You restrict it, so it will depend on the hyperplane generated by these things.
So let's thank the speaker.